Hello, and welcome to the Author Roundup, a special segment of the Book Connection Show where we meet up and coming indie authors and talk to them about their recently released books. Hi, welcome to Author Roundup. For today's episode, we'll be talking to indie author Manel Halliday. And she worked for 35 years as a family therapist, but with the death of her three brothers, she was forced to practice and use compassion for herself and undertake a deep healing journey. From this journey has come a delightful story about how a young girl climbed Mount Fear. On the way, she discovered qualities like faith and bravery by listening to the voices other than the inner critic. So Manel is here with us today to talk about her book, Climbing Mount Fear, The Adventure of Punchi. All right, so would you like to say hello to our viewers and listeners, Manel?
Hi there. Look, I'm very excited about having this opportunity to talk to the viewers and listeners because it's not often that, you write something and you have no idea who's going to read it or who's going to listen to it or whatever. So, yes, thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, and I'm very glad that we're finally able to do this today. So, like I've said, we'll be talking about your book, Climbing Mount Fear, The Adventure of Punchi. And it was published like August of last year, right? Am I
Yeah.
correct?
Yes.
Okay. Could you tell us about that? Tell us about your book, Manal.
Yeah. Well, I don't know where to begin to with you because the book itself came completely, off left field for me. I hadn't planned to write a book at all. It was during COVID. I was isolated in Victoria, Melbourne, Australia. And, I was just writing things about, my own inner child, if you like, and came to see, I'm a family therapist by profession, how important it is to kind of then my thoughts and the story that I weaved into my thoughts would be great to publish it. And then I approached, Balboa, and here I am. I've got a book, not one book, I've got three books really. So Punchi, if you like, is really my inner self, really. I call her Punchi because Punchi, I'm originally from Sri Lanka. I was born in Sri Lanka, but lived most of my life in Australia. Punchi is known as the young one, the little one, so she's riddled with anxiety and worry. She's always worrying, being the youngest in the family, worried about what may or may not happen in her life. But that worry, took her to a place that and the anxiety that she was always fearful about doing things. So this young girl, Punchi, 9-year-old, decides that she's actually going to break this whole thing about fear and anxiety. And she looks at this mountain, it is the mountain of fear that she's facing within herself, and decide that, she wants to climb it. So there she is climbing, decide to climb the mountain. Finally, she has saying, I'm going to do it. Today's the day I'm going to do it. And then she hears this voice. So it's based on these voices, inner voices within herself, fear, anxiety or worry, doubt that fear also brings into a young mind when you're trying to do something new. These are her inner friends, if you like, all of a sudden turn up, it seems, at the base of the mountain that she's trying to climb. And so it's basically based on her inner fears and inner voices, and how she kind of fights these inner voices and decides to, her fear doesn't completely go away. You find the second and the third book, she will still face a lot of fears. But, she finds some strategies and some by herself, not always listening to parts of herself, self-doubt and, inner critic, if you like, but actually listening to more the softer parts of herself, that is having faith in herself and having, being brave and, those sorts of voices. So the book is essentially geared at anybody, anybody who has an inner child, basically. Correct. But it kind of turned out to be looking like a I'll show you a picture of it, looking like a picture of a real young child. This is the first book, Climbing Mount Fear, and this is the second one, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But I guess, what I want to say is don't be alarmed by the cover. You never judge a book by the cover. Cover looks like it is for the young minds, but it's really relevant to most of us. In fact, a lot of the feedback I have had have been parents and adults.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
especially at the time that it came out, when you said you were writing it during the pandemic. So
Yeah.
that's really relevant when all of us were really feeling a lot of fear at the moment because of the unknown and the pandemic and all that. Yeah. So would you say that some of these or most of these came from, like inspiration? Did you get inspiration from experiences you've had, or tell us what inspired you to write the book?
Well, absolutely. As you said at the introduction, when my brothers, all of a sudden, I lost three brothers, one after the other. That was
Oh,
before the pandemic. And I was struck by grief that I had never experienced before. I had lost my parents, but not in the same way. When you lose a sibling in itself is hard. I think, for me, it was incredibly difficult, but I didn't lose just one. I lost three brothers. Within 3 years, I lost three brothers. So I was pretty much grieving at the time. And there I was facing my own fears, if you like, and my own grief, being locked in my own home, the four walls of my own home. I had just traveled in India. I've just come back, and I got locked out of India, basically. So there was that unknown, the fears of, how will things be? Will I ever be able to go back traveling? Will I ever be able to kind of get over this terrible grief and fear that I was facing? So that was where the inspiration came from. So, I just wrote them down, and all of a sudden it turned out to be a book, and I thought, great, because what I am on about is to, as a family therapist, always it's been about helping families, young adults, children, to be able to confront, we talk about voices a lot, and when somebody hears voices, it is like it's a taboo, you've got schizophrenia. Um, and we want to sort of think people are crazy, but we hear voices all the time. And that is our inner voice that we hear, and some people might call it a voice, some people may call it intuition, some people might say, oh, I had a premonition. So you can call it what you like, but at the end of the day, there is a part of us, and what I call it's the heart. It's not the head. The heart is constantly yearning to be heard, and it's such an intelligent and sophisticated inner part of ourselves that we ignore, because we think of love and we think of heart and love, and we think it's something that misguide us. But in actual fact, from a very young age, when we start to realize that the heart is right in the center of us, guiding us, talking to us, letting us know when we're afraid, and these voices within ourselves constantly trying to talk to us. So it's about, I guess, helping young people to kind of pay attention to their fears, and how are they dealing with the fears? Are they kind of talking themselves out of them, or into the fears? Because the mind is a crazy place. It's always trying to tell us that we're not good enough. There's the self-doubt aspect, and young minds particularly, there's a lot of self-doubt. And so as soon as you kind of think, the first thought is, I can't do it, that voice is the doubtful voice within you saying, I can't do it. But there's another part who's saying, yes, you can, this part that's brave. But that voice we don't listen to quite often. So this book is about kind of paying attention to those voices, and particularly the ones that are positive and, strength building. Yeah.
I like what you said about, the heart asking for us to listen to it, and us telling us a lot of things about it, because, most adults would just pay attention to their minds, to their intellect and all that. And most of the time they tend to kind of like, not pay too much attention to how they're really feeling and all that. Now, you did tell us that your book a target audience for your book would be children, right? But you
Yep.
said it also applies to
Families,
adults as
really.
well. Mhm.
Yeah, when a child reads, generally it's either the teachers, the caregivers, and parents who pick the books, quite often. So I have the first page pretty much is actually bringing attention to the caregivers, meaning teachers, grandparents, who are kind of saying, look, do you know your child's inner world, and how do you pay attention to that inner world without just jumping in and trying to correct them? So it's about, I guess, giving skills and strength for parents to be able to kind of really listen to their children, not just hearing it, but listening to it, but really hear them.
I
Not
think
just
it would
listening, but
be a
hearing.
good idea to read the book together, right? Like perhaps like parents to their
Yeah.
kids, they can read the book to them. Yeah, and
Yeah.
you did show us the book, and it has beautiful illustrations as well. So it could be it would, it would make a good bedtime story perhaps, or some reading time between the parents and the kids and all that. Okay. So I know it's quite difficult to write books, and you said you did that during the pandemic, but how long did it take you to complete your book?
Yeah, look, when I think about it, it probably took, even before actually putting the thoughts down, I guess, you could say, informally, I was writing it in my head, this book about how do I reach out to children, reach out to my inner child for years and years and years. I had ignored, and as a professional, you're always listening and hearing and thinking from your heart, thinking from your head. But when you really stop and think from your heart, I've been doing that for ages, or at least teaching myself to listen from my heart. So, but all in all, a couple of years, I think, right throughout the pandemic, I just kept writing, stopping writing, because I did a lot of, self-help kind of retreats and silent retreats and things like that, because I was silent anyway. I figured I might as well do retreats and just meet other people through, Zoom. So there were times I stopped, but mostly I think it took good year and a half, 2 years to get it together.
Perhaps you can share with us some anecdotes when you were writing the book. Did you have like, any anecdotes or anything you would like to share to us while you were writing it? Like perhaps you can tell us about what made it fun to write it, what was the challenging part?
Yeah. Look, I think in a lot of ways it was all very challenging because I lived and breathed the book, and simultaneously, I remember going to university when I used to write the topics of anxiety, I could feel my own anxiety rising, So the book was a bit like that too. As I was talking about Punchi and her difficulties, I was reliving them in a way, because part of that is my own story, a young girl who was very much on her own. She suffered on her own with that really, house full of people. But who do you reach out to when you're the youngest? You don't reach out to anybody, and most children don't. And parents are not aware of it. You ask your children questions, but they don't tell you a lot what's going on. This is the part that you don't tell your parents, that I am afraid, and then to be able to engage with that. So I was engaging with those parts of myself as I was writing it. So there were days I was thinking, God, was I going through that? So there was some pain that merged from it. But then it was also fun to be able to say, finally, maybe someone would read this and might get something out of it. So where I talked about, particularly when Punchi was meeting Mrs. Faith, Mrs. Faith is an incredible character. She's just so easygoing, so loving. She's kind of uh, the love balm, if you like, within yourself, that is always there to soothe you, but you're not listening to it. Our inner critic is so critical, we're listening to that part, but not. So Mrs. Faith kind of made me, when I was writing about, her, holding Punchi and sort of saying, Punchi, I was always with you. You just wouldn't listen. And just then you said something about what would it take to not be afraid, and that's when she intervenes and she sort of said, well, I'm glad finally, you know call my name, and here I am. I'm Mrs. Faith, and here I am. Mr. Courage says, I'm Mr. Courage. So, yeah, those were fantastic. I realized I even now, when I'm sort of a little bit afraid, who isn't, I sort of say, hey, Mr. Courage, where are you, within me? So it's like you can literally engage and dialogue with these parts of yourself. When I was doing that, it was fun. It was really fun. It had pain and fun both. I was laughing and crying at the same time, if you like, So it's one of those kinds of books, you laugh and cry.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And because you've said like most of or some of those experiences were really your own.
Yeah, they
Right.
were real, so real. And I think most people could probably relate to that. Most
Mhm.
people I have spoken to, adults, said, oh, I really can relate to that part.
And what's the most difficult or challenging part in writing it, or perhaps in the whole publishing experience? If you can share with our viewers and listeners.
Yeah, look, I'm a talker, and I'm not a huge writer as such. I write when I have to, but I like talking. So to sit there and read and reread and go back to it and edit and all of that kind of was the challenging part for me. But writing the book itself was fun. It was fun.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like the conceptualizing the story and all that was fun, but probably the writing, the actual writing itself, the technical side of it.
Technical side of it. I sort of think I should be able to just get it like that, but I don't, and it's okay to say that, you can be a good writer and not have that part. And that's why you pay somebody to do it, because you can't be good at everything, really.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah.
And your book has been out for like a few months now. So I'm
Yeah.
sure a lot of people have been giving you feedback about your book, right? Or
Yeah.
reviews. Like perhaps you'd like to share with us some of those reviews you've received from them or you've
Yeah.
you've
Yeah.
gotten from your readers.
Yeah. Well, taken back moment for me was this 60, oh, he's actually 70, I think, 70-year-old man who has never had children, lives by himself. And he's probably my number one fan. He read the book and he was going through some depression, and he read the book and he burst out crying, and he said to me, oh my God, you know what? I'm going to take this book to bed every night and read it and remind myself that it is okay to feel some of those feelings that I have felt all my life, but never really shared with anybody. A 70-year-old man saying that they've never shared, and no wonder he's depressed, never shared with anybody some of those innermost secret fears that people have had, like going to the schoolyard and playing on the monkey bars and being terrified. And like Punchi talks about, reading in front of the class was one of the scariest things for her, in front of her friends. People would laugh. So we hang on to them. And even at the age of 70, this man could immediately, he resonated with that. He said to me, God, thank you. So, and you know what he did? He bought a whole heap of books and he lives in South Australia, donated them. He said, this is my pilgrimage, walked to different libraries and schools and donated these books and said, have a
Oh,
read of this.
oh,
So
that's
that
so
was like, for me, I cried, so yeah. So that was kind of the best bit of feedback I've had, So that's why I say, look, don't be fooled by the book's cover. It's for all ages, because that inner child lives within us all, and we don't talk to it and listen to it, often enough.
yeah. Well, Manel, to be able to touch someone's life like that through your book, that must be an amazing experience for you. And I could just
Yeah.
imagine you crying about it and all that. So,
Yeah. I said, well, I wrote the book really, now I can die. I said, because if you got something out of it, that's what it was about for me. That's why I cried. I thought, look, one person gets something out of it. How amazing. I want to write more.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how about those who don't get a chance to talk to you, but still, get affected or get, touched by whatever they read
Yeah,
from your book. Yeah. So that must be an amazing
exactly. Yeah.
experience.
I'd love to hear from all. I've got a website and I'd love to hear from people, young, old, any age, really. What people think of it. And I'm not scared to hear criticisms because there'll be lots of people who'll be, criticizing stuff, what you mean about voice. I come from a mental health background, teaching mental health, community mental health and psychology students, family therapy. So I know a lot of people would say, inner voices, this could be really quite scary, let's have a dialogue about that. Let's talk about it. Why is it so scary to hear voices? Why do we think that it is so abnormal? This is not about psychosis. This is about what a person sitting and listening to their inner self, their heart self.
That brings me to my next question because, knowing that you have been a family therapist for 35 years, and as a therapist, you have touched a lot of people's lives as well. When you talk to them and you help other people with whatever problems they're going through, how different is that from your experience as an author, knowing that you more or less get the same kind of connection with them, even just through your book?
Yeah, look, firstly, I haven't actually, I realized the book also says 35 years as a family therapist. I haven't been a family therapist for 35 years, but I have been in the mental health field for 35 years as a mental health clinician. Then later on in my life, I went and did family therapy. So I've done family therapy for probably 15 years, altogether. So that just to let you know that's what it is, because I, wouldn't want people to think that, something that wasn't true. But look, when I have sat with a family and talked to families, that often the difficulty is people engaging with each other. They'll all look to me, looking for answers or talking to me, but really don't engage within themselves, don't stop and think, what do I really want to say to my mum and dad here? It doesn't matter even if it upsets them. I'm not yelling at them. Like a lot of the time, that's the work we did. We often get pull the parents aside, said, you're going to have to really listen and not react when your child is speaking to you about their pain. As parents, we want to desperately help our children and we react to it. It is about giving that voice to be able to just simply say what you're thinking. And then we pull the children aside and sort of say to them, if you really want your mum and dad to listen to you, you might have to tone it down. Say what you're thinking, but don't yell at them, because that's counterproductive, because they're going to get their back up and, there's going to be a, tug of war, So so then when families come together, they get to really listen to each other. But in a book like this, I suppose it's less threatening. The child can listen to their story in the book, and the parents get to hear their child's story without the child even having to tell them that. By asking, do you feel like that too sometimes? Do you feel so scared to read in front of the class? And give them permission to be able to say yes, and not trying to fix it, not trying to give them any solutions. It's not solution focused. It's about just engagement. So a book like this would get families engaging with each other and really talking, and the parents to be able to say, I remember I used to feel like that, normalizing some of the fears and anxieties and worries. So it's a great tool, I think. For me, it's taking it to the next level, to be able to put it out there. People I don't need to be in the room. There doesn't need to be a therapist, in the room. Families, ultimately, they have to talk to each other. They have to kind of understand each other. Major conflicts happen within the families, or even minor conflict, because people aren't really getting what the other person is saying. We're jumping with assumptions and we want to fix it, and that kind of feeling, rather than saying, well, just let's listen to each other. No judgment, no nothing, So so for me, that's exciting.
And your book is a good start to that conversation. Yes. Right.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping there'll be more people writing frankly about their stories and about opening up conversations. Books to me are about getting people thinking, but also opening heartfelt conversations, that coming back to the heart and saying, we talk, there are book clubs that talk about the stories and analyzing and all of that. But what did you feel? How did it touch you? Getting people to talk about this, the heart, because after all, we are heart-centered beings. That's who we are.
Mhm. That's a very beautiful message, Manel, for everyone, especially for the kids. And,
Yes.
everyone wants to have a family wherein they can be free to talk to each other and all that. I guess that's everyone's goal. And you did say that, one of the things you would like to happen is for more people to start writing about their experiences
Yeah.
and all that.
Yeah.
So, as an author or as a writer, what advice can you give someone who is just working on his or her first book?
Yeah. Look, I think the subject needs to touch your heart. If I know we do a lot of research about this, that, and the other. I did no research at all for these books. They came from my heart. If they didn't come from my heart, I don't know whether I could have written them. For me, it has to feel real. It has to come from a subject that you really know well. So if you are writing, do all your research, for some subject. Of course, you need to do research, but to ultimately say, does this subject speak to me? How does it speak to me? Where does it touch me? That kind of thing. Think about it, so that's how I did.
And that's how you started your first book.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Could you tell us about your personal and professional goals this year for your books or as an author?
Yeah, look, so I've written the first one, and this is the second one, Opening the Door to Love, which, again, Punchi, being a smart girl, decides to explore the whole business of the heart, the love. And she goes and talks to her grandmother, and grandmother kind of gives her this incredible picture about what it is to have self-worth, if you like, so it's about conquering fear and anxiety and worry, and then going into the next step, which is self-worth, looking at how do we kind of treat ourselves. So the second book is very much about that. What messages do we give ourselves, and how do we speak to ourselves, and what things do we say to ourselves, and how do we correct those things? So it's about self-worth and self-love. And the third is going to be about quietening the mind, if you like. So they're the steps I have taken in my spiritual journey, if you like, conquering a level of fear, exploring the heart, and then looking at what gets in the way of us really listening to our heart. And, to me, it is our mind. The third book is going to be about that, how to quieten the mind, if you like. And I know there's been lots of books written about it, but I don't think there's been much written for children. Just about ready to be published. So that's the third. So I have to do the part that I like the least this year is to rework it and reread it and edit it. So if I can get through that in the next few months, that's my goal really for this year. And then, I've always got things cooking in the back of my head, what I would like to write next. But it's a journey, and it follows my journey really, if you like, as I kind of get older and, kind of look at, what's the meaning of life? That's what it's about. And I want children to think about that from a very young age. Why are we here? What makes us who we are? How do we keep ourselves kind of feeling good about ourselves? So yeah, who knows where the next book, after the third one, I'm not sure where I'll go, but there's some ideas. Yeah.
That's wonderful. So we'll be sure to expect another book this year from you then.
Yes, I'm hoping at least by Christmas there should be one, hopefully, but if not before. Yeah.
Okay. And will this book be about Punchi as well? Or are you going to bring Punchi's character to this new books that you're making?
Yeah, it is her journey with her grandmother again, asking how to quieten the mind. So there'll be lots of resources, things like developing skills in order to quieten the mind, meditation, far as kids can do meditation, kids can yoga and techniques like that. So there'll be a lot of techniques hopefully in that book.
That's good.
Yeah.
I like the idea of bringing Punchi through all of these books. So
Yeah.
she somehow gets to grow with the kids who get to read your books as well.
Exactly. It's a journey together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very nice. So beyond the third book, you expect a few more books to
Well,
be.
yeah, depending on my energy levels and inspiration, it's an ongoing thing. But yeah, look, I think I'm hoping.
Okay.
Yeah.
Aside from, Punchi's adventures and growth, do you have other books in mind, or perhaps in your bucket list, there are other topics that you would want to write about?
Yeah, look, I'm somebody who's always moved and driven to write about, discovering the self, if you like, and so it would be for adults, I guess. The next thing would be writing something for the adults in similar themes, if you like, but yeah, getting into the adult market, but it's this is more fun, I think. I'm a child at heart, so I think writing for children is fun. Yeah, that's kind of is something that I'm thinking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, do you have like a final message for your readers or people who would be interested to read about Punchi?
I think, just enjoy the reading. Don't take it too seriously. I hope that it will be, if you take one thing out of one book, for me these days is I'm taking something out of a book, but not to expect too much, but to just enjoy reading and keep on reading, things about whatever that helps you to develop as an individual. So yeah, look, all the best. I hope you happy journey with Punchi. Enjoy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you invite people to check out your books, all of your books?
Yeah, absolutely. Please read all the books. If you are getting, one book, I think, get the first book, which is Climbing Mount Fear. Second one is about how about opening the door to love. And I think try to read it in the sequence if you can, because, it makes a lot more sense about the journey that this young girl goes through. And sharing her innermost fearful thoughts and shame, if you like, opening that whole topic of shame. And so yeah, look, read the whole three at least if you can. Otherwise, check out the libraries, because some of the books I know in Australia, some of the libraries have got them, but hopefully you'd buy your own copy. It's fun having your own copy.
Yes. So we're inviting everyone to purchase a copy of Climbing Mount Fear, The Adventure of Punchi, and
Yeah.
Manel's second book as well.
Yeah. How about opening the door to love?
Mm-hmm. And it's available in Balboa Press online bookstore, as well as online resellers like Amazon and Barnes and Noble. So be sure to check out those books, get a copy, and go through the same journey that Punchi has gone through, and I'm sure we'll be learning a lot.
Yeah, and send me some feedback if you would love to hear from you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Manel, for a very inspiring
Thank you
talk.
very much for the opportunity. All the best, Jenny. Thank you.
Yes. And to everyone who joined us, to all our viewers and our listeners, thank you, and see you again on the next episode of Author Roundup.